Y'all, y'all, let's watch MrBallen, bro. I haven't watched this nigga vids in a long time. I know y'all gotta know about him, bro. Cause he famous as shit now.
Picked a great.
What? But when you used to watch a nigga back when they ain't had much subscribers, and then you see him now, you like, this nigga selling his shirt? Oh yeah, he definitely famous as shit. This nigga selling his shirt, this plain ass Walmart shirt, for $27. Like, you can't find this nowhere else. I hope he at least got some writing of his own, like, logo on
Name,
it.
but your voice doesn't quite match it.
We have a fix.
Voice mod gives you over 100.
In the early morning hours on a
Like, look at this shirt he got on. Boy, I thought nobody want that shit.
Saturday and
Nah, MrBallen the GOAT, bro. Y'all can't. I could cloud him, bro, cause you feel me. I'm actually subscribed to this nigga, and I've been watching his videos for so long. You feel me? I didn't put money in this nigga pocket. Hypothetically.
In the early morning hours on a Saturday in 2013.
Let's
In the
listen to
early
this
morning
story. Let's
hours.
listen to the story though. I know, but back then he used to tell stories good as hell, and he always like improvising his shit and making his videos better. So, and we upload two, three, even 4 times every week.
In the early morning hours on a Saturday in 2013, a man dressed all in black hid in the shadows
This is a nigga. Why do you put this nigga in front of my screen? Like, don't be doing that.
on a side street
Don't
in
be
downtown
doing that,
Antwerp,
gay.
Belgium.
I can tell that's a nigga. That's not no white person. Look at this nigga lips. This is a nigga. Stop doing that.
A man dressed all in black hid in the shadows on a side street in downtown Antwerp, Belgium.
Right.
The man had lost track of how long he'd been there, but he didn't care. He'd hide in the shadows for as long as he had to, waiting patiently for the perfect moment that he knew was gonna arrive eventually.
What, he
And
trying to kill him?
finally, stumbling footsteps approached, and the man crouched down and
Oh,
got ready. But
might
before
not
we get
be
into
black.
that story,
That ain't the same
you may have
nigga.
noticed that today
That
is a
other nigga
Wednesday,
was a nigga.
and you may be
You
asking
can't
yourself,
convince me
why am I
otherwise.
getting a news story on a Wednesday?
I
Well,
know nigga when I see nigga. I see nigga, I say nigga.
Wednesday. And you may be asking yourself, why am I getting a news story on a Wednesday? Well, beginning this week, you're gonna get 2, 3, even 4 new MrBallen videos each week right here. So, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious,
Cause I remember he did post every week. He said, and with 2, 3, even. Okay. So now he on some. Damn, and this was 15 hours ago. This recent. Oh, yeah. Finna be feeding y'all boys. Should we start reacting to these bitches? I don't know, gang. Yeah, fucking long. You know I like to pause the video.
MrBallen videos each week right here. So, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we do upload 2, 3, even 4 times a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please sneak into the like button's house and lay hundreds of mousetraps inside of their bed. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
My throat hurt. I'm about to go take some NyQuil and make me some. But when I take that NyQuil, I ain't gonna lie, I'm gonna be out by like 7 o'clock.
After
And I
midnight
would
on
take the
Saturday,
daytime
October
one, but
19th,
I ain't
2013,
trying to waste it.
a 23-year-old man named O'Day
I ain't
on
trying to
Saturday,
waste
October
it because you feel me. I'm sick right now, and I don't smoke when I'm sick. But when I don't smoke, I can't sleep. But the NyQuil help me sleep. But I want to go to sleep again tonight, so I'm gonna take that NyQuil.
19th, 2013, a 23-year-old man named O'Day Egilus stood at the bar in a
Odell
packed dance
Beckham.
club in Antwerp, Belgium. The bartender slid 2 shot glasses across the bar towards O'Day.
Hey, I'm finna go get me something to eat right quick. Cause I'm hungry as shit, bro. I've been live for like 3 hours, and I don't feel good. Hold on. YouTube. This shit go get cut out the video, so you ain't gotta see this. But the niggas actually live in the chat. I appreciate y'all boys for thugging out with me. You feel me? I promise I ain't gonna promise, cause that's nigga might even forget what he said, but I ain't. But nah, real shit. I'm trying like, uh, I'm trying to improve the watching experience for my viewers. But I'll be right back though, cuz. Right now, Mike don't make it. The realest people will tell you. Hold on, I gotta tell y'all this real ass quote I just seen. It say the realest people will tell you the truth even if it makes them look bad because they value integrity more than being liked by everybody. Leave y'all with that fool. Let me get my headphones so I listen to this chord. Oh, actually. Listen to this chord. Damn, I can't eat. I can't eat, chat. The fuck? I can't eat. Where is that? Hold up. Bruh. Literally, bruh. It's 6 o'clock a.m. I start streaming at like 1 or 2 something. Like, yeah, nah. Like, y'all don't care about me. I'm finna fucking die from malnutrition again. Fuck. We shot. I can feel the changes. I can feel the new people around me just want to be famous. Oh yeah, I'm back, chat. Give me a second though. I gotta mix my shit up. I'm about to let y'all know what I'm eating. Alright. I'm eating Greek yogurt, grapes, strawberries, white strawberries, cherries, and granola. And honey. A real breakfast ass meal for a real hungry ass nigga. Hold on. But I need more desk space. Oh, I need to get some of this shit off my desk. Alright, we here.
After midnight on Saturday, October 19th, 2013, a 23-year-old man named Ode Egilus stood at the bar in a packed dance club in Antwerp, Belgium.
Right.
The bartender slid 2 shot glasses across the bar towards Ode, and he grabbed both of them, he held one, and he handed the other to his friend, Kevin Rodriguez Fuentes, who was standing right behind him.
Right.
It was Kevin's birthday. So Ode raised his shot glass and shouted happy birthday in Spanish over the pounding dance music, and then the 2 young men slammed back their drinks. Ode had moved to Antwerp, Belgium from Spain about 6 months earlier when he had gotten a job as a computer engineer.
Okay.
When he'd arrived, he
Hey,
had
chat,
known
is anybody in the chat from overseas? Is any one of y'all boys from overseas, like Belgium or whatever? Like Belgium or Russia or some shit or whatever the fuck. I don't. But I ain't over there, bro. If y'all over there, let me know something.
anybody. But he'd met Kevin at a beer festival, and the 2 of them had gotten along right away. And Kevin was from the area, so he'd introduced Ode to a bunch of his friends and shown him the best spots to hang out in the city, and the 2 had gotten very close very quickly. Now, standing at the bar after, taking their shots, Kevin to a bunch of his friends and shown him the best spot. And Kevin was from the area, so he'd introduced Ode to a bunch of his friends and shown him the best spots to hang out in the city. And the 2 had gotten very close very quickly. Right. Now, standing at the bar after, taking their shots, Kevin tapped on Ode's shoulder and he pointed out at the dance floor and he grinned because there was a group of young women about their age all dancing together out there.
So what I'm getting
the 2 young men,
he really didn't know this nigga. He just moved in. This was the first nigga that kind of was nice to him, so he just stuck with him. That's how it is, bro. When you go somewhere that you're not from or you don't really know what's going on, or some shit like you don't speak the language or you don't get the culture, you always find that one person that treats you nice, or that one nigga that speak English, and you just cling to that nigga. You just cling to that nigga. He call your best friend.
They headed out to the dance floor to go speak with these girls. And from this point on, the night really became a blur for Ode, who kept going back and forth from the dance floor back to the bar for more drinks. But, despite that, Ode was having a great time. It was really nights like this that made him feel like Antwerp was his new home. But he also knew if he stayed out much longer here, he might end up passing out right on the dance floor. So Ode and Kevin and some friends they had just met on the dance floor stumbled out of the club and into the city. When they got out there, the streets were pretty empty. And so Ode reflexively pulled his phone out of his pocket and looked at the time. Now, his vision was fuzzy, but even still, one-eyeing it, he could see that it was close to 4 a.m. And given the fact that it was so late, basically it was the next day at this point, he just told the group good night, and then he turned around to start walking home to go to bed. The next morning, O'Day's friend, Kevin, woke up with a pounding headache. His eyes
Okay,
fluttered
O'Day
open.
dead. O'Day gotta be dead because why the fuck we go from his perspective? But how do we even know this? Like, okay. No, because he was there with other friends. That's how we know.
Open, and he looked around and he let out a sigh of relief.
Yeah, O'Day did.
Because he was safely in his bedroom in his apartment in Antwerp. He had been so drunk by the end of his birthday celebration the night before. Shuttered open, and he looked around and he let out a sigh of relief because he was safely in his bedroom in his apartment in Antwerp. He had been so drunk by the end of his birthday celebration the night before that he literally didn't remember getting home. And so now, painfully, he rolled over and grabbed his phone off the nightstand and reflexively texted O'Day, along with another friend that had been out with him the night before, asking how they were feeling. The other friend texted right back, but O'Day did not respond. But this didn't really worry Kevin that much. I mean, he's horribly hungover. O'Day has to be as well, and so he likely is just sleeping it off, and he'll be in touch when he wakes up. However, all day that day, Kevin did not hear from O'Day. And then the next day, October 20th, when still Kevin has not heard from O'Day, he really started to get worried. But when Kevin called O'Day to check on him to make sure he was okay, when he put the phone to his ear, it didn't ring. Instead, it went straight to O'Day's voicemail, like his phone was turned off. And to Kevin, this was pretty unusual. O'Day was usually very responsive, even with a hangover. And by this point, Kevin had given him a full day, 24 hours to recover, like he should be in touch by now. What's going on? So Kevin called the other friend who they'd gone out with, who had texted him back the day before, to see if maybe O'Day had checked in with him. But that friend said he also had not spoken to O'Day. And so at this point, Kevin hung up.
I chew a loud chat. I don't give a fuck. I'm hungry. Y'all had to tough it out.
But that friend said he also had not spoken to O'Day. And so at this point, Kevin hung up and just decided to go to O'Day's house and literally physically check on him. However, when Kevin arrived at O'Day's house, he found O'Day's roommates, but no O'Day. O'Day's roommates did not know O'Day very well, so they didn't literally physically check on him. However, when Kevin arrived at O'Day's house, he found O'Day's roommates, but no O'Day. O'Day's roommates did not know O'Day very well, so they didn't know what was sort of normal and not normal behavior. So when he had gone out for Kevin's birthday party and didn't come back, they just figured he was crashing at a friend's place or something. But to Kevin, this was unusual. To hear that he had not come back, that was not normal. He would know if, O'Day was at a friend's house. And so Kevin was starting to panic. But then Kevin remembered one of his and O'Day's mutual friends had recently gone out of town for a wedding. And so Kevin thought, maybe that's where O'Day is. He's gone with her to the wedding, and that's why he's not here, and that's why he's not answering his phone. So Kevin left O'Day's house and called this friend, a young woman whose name was Oyane. He was hoping that she would have an explanation for everything, but instead, when
Facebook, bro, talking about credit Facebook. Damn, you all on Shawty Facebook.
Answered the phone, it was obvious from her voice that she was also freaking out about O'Day. Oyane said she also had been calling O'Day nonstop over the past day or so, and she couldn't get in touch with him. And so it was becoming clear that nobody had seen O'Day since the night of the birthday party when he set off around 4 a.m. to walk home drunk from the bar. Kevin had no idea what he was supposed to do, but he felt like his friend was in trouble. So he contacted the police and officially reported O'Day missing.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform made for anyone with an idea.
But get my shit right so I can skip this.
The following day, Monday, October 21st, Kevin sat in a small room across from members of the Missing Persons Unit of the Belgian National Police. And as soon as the officers started asking Kevin questions, it became clear that this was going to be a very frustrating meeting for everybody. Because no matter how hard Kevin tried, he literally couldn't remember much at all. His memory of his and O'Day's night out on his birthday were really just blurry images and pieces of random conversations because, he was drunk. But Kevin did manage to remember what O'Day had been wearing. He had a gray hooded sweatshirt and a black and white checkered scarf.
Now y'all got pictures at the club. That's bro.
And he also knew the area of town specifically where they had gone.
Who was that girl? Who was her?
Out. But really that was it.
Went home?
And so by the time Kevin left the police station, he felt like he was really letting his friend down. And he just couldn't handle the idea that now he would just have to sit around and wait and hope police magically found him, when right now, O'Day, wherever he was, could be in trouble or hurt or something. He just felt like he had to do something. So that afternoon, Kevin met up with some of O'Day's other friends, and together, they began hanging posters all around the city that had pictures of O'Day on them. Antwerp was a very busy city, filled with bars and restaurants that stayed open very late, so they were sure that somebody had to have seen O'Day while he was walking home. He couldn't have just disappeared into thin air. People don't do that.
Right.
Meanwhile, detectives in the missing persons unit got to work. Now, Kevin had not given them a ton to go on, but knowing where in the city he and O'Day had gone out and what O'Day had been wearing did actually turn out to be quite helpful. Because with this basic information, police were able to collect CCTV surveillance camera footage from outside of the bars, restaurants, and street corners where Kevin and O'Day had been.
Okay.
And it didn't take them long to pick up on restaurants and street corners.
It said real footage of
Where Kevin and O'Day had
talk
been.
about Facebook.
And it didn't take them long to pick up on O'Day's trail. The investigators were hoping to find footage of O'Day getting into a cab or some other vehicle, or maybe wandering into a building, or even evidence that he'd been attacked in some capacity. And at first, they thought that is exactly what they'd found. Because on camera footage, around 4 a.m. on the morning O'Day disappeared, the police saw him wandering down this dimly lit side street on his own. His black and white checkered scarf really jumped out on the footage, and the police watched on video as this man suddenly came out of the shadows and rushed O'Day. The man attacked O'Day and stole what looked like O'Day's wallet right out of his pocket, and then the man took off running. And as disturbing as it was, the footage did not actually surprise the investigators very much. While Antwerp was not a particularly violent place, it was a big city, and drunk people wandering home at night did occasionally get mugged. However, what the investigators saw next on the surveillance footage did completely shock them, because after the mugging, O'Day had pulled himself together and kept heading down the street.
Right.
And on footage taken a few minutes later from a different camera, the police saw O'Day still wandering on his own when suddenly 2 new men rushed up, attacked O'Day, took his phone, and then they ran away. Meaning, in the span of just a few minutes, O'Day had been mugged twice by 3 different people. And none of the investigators had ever seen anything like that. It was like something you'd expect to see in a movie or a TV show about a guy cursed with bad luck or something.
Right.
But as bizarre as this was, investigators now had something to go on. They didn't know if these muggers, the 3 men, were connected in some way, or if this had truly been 2 random, unconnected muggings. But O'Day's cell phone and wallet had been stolen by these guys. So they could track O'Day's cell phone data and also his credit card info, and the investigators hoped that would then lead them right to O'Day's attackers, and they could figure out what their affiliation was and why they targeted O'Day, and hopefully where O'Day is now.
Why we leave on a cliffhanger like that?
Ooh, we got that reggaeton. Today, we're gonna be making beats you guys send me, okay?
The investigators' plan took a few days, but it did pay off in a big way. By tracking O'Day's credit card, investigators discovered that somebody had attempted to use one of his cards at an ATM in the city. And so they pulled surveillance footage from that ATM to identify the first mugger. Then, by using cell phone tower data and CCTV footage along the route where they saw his cell phone was taken, investigators were able to identify the other 2 attackers involved in the second mugging. And so now they believed they just needed to talk to these thieves to figure out where O'Day was. Fast forward to October 29th, 10 days after O'Day's disappearance, and he still is nowhere to be found. Officers from the missing persons unit interviewed these 3 muggers separately. The police made it clear that they had a pile of evidence here that showed they mugged O'Day shortly before he vanished, so there's no point in trying to deny it. They know what they did. and none of the muggers did try to deny it. In fact, all three men admitted that they had jumped O'Day on the street, and they told the police exactly what they had stolen. But they insisted their attacks, the two muggings, were not coordinated at all. They just happened to have gotten to O'Day within a few minutes of each other. And then even more importantly,
And they talking about, oh yeah, this is a relatively safe neighborhood. I hate when they say shit like that.
So all insisted that they had nothing to do with O'Day's disappearance. All they did was rob him, that's it. As the investigators listened to these muggers talk, all they could do was stare in disbelief. The idea that three muggers had randomly committed 2 attacks on the same man within minutes of each other, and that their victim had then disappeared in yet another unrelated incident, seemed almost comical. But no matter how hard the police pressed these guys, they all completely stuck to their stories,
Right.
which was, we mugged him, and then we ran away, and we never saw him again. The police arrested and held all 3 men in connection to the robberies that they admitted to doing. But their goal, despite what these men have said, was to find enough evidence to still charge them with the kidnapping or maybe even murder of O'Day. But then a new piece of surveillance footage surfaced from a new camera. And this new footage actually showed O'Day moments
Why
after
y'all
the
just search all the cameras first? Why y'all like, okay, let me go search some more cameras. Like, y'all should have
second mugging. And on this footage, investigators
one
showed
of them niggas would have slipped up and said some incriminating shit, even though they didn't even have nothing to do with it. Y'all would have just went with, oh, we got the people. Y'all don't even a lot of shit they probably solved shit and it's not solved at all. Like, come on now.
piece of surveillance footage surfaced from a new camera. And this new footage actually showed O'Day moments after the second mugging. And on this footage, investigators didn't see any of the muggers dragging O'Day away or something. Instead, just like the muggers said, they really did take off after that second mugging. And just like he'd done after the first attack, O'Day dusted himself off and just kept on walking down the street and out of the camera's range, but he was alone. And so now, to their complete astonishment, the police had to admit that the muggers might be telling the truth, and that O'Day could have just kept wandering the
Police had to admit they was wrong. Something they hate.
streets of Antwerp for hours after he'd gotten attacked. They didn't know, but they know the muggers ran away and O'Day was alone, at least briefly after the second attack. And also, this new footage made them realize that to really conduct this investigation, they were going to need to search the entire city to see if anyone, anywhere, had seen O'Day.
Okay,
So,
I understand why they was trying to get less work. I understand why they just like, okay, we got the niggas who robbed them, we got. I understand now.
Early November of 2013, about 2 weeks after O'Day's disappearance, Belgium National Police
Side note,
anywhere
this look like the city Assassin's Creed.
had seen O'Day. So, in early November of 2013, about 2 weeks after O'Day's disappearance, Belgium National Police conducted a massive investigation throughout all of Antwerp. They visited all the bars, all the restaurants, all the clubs in the area roughly where O'Day and his friends had been out partying. But no matter who they spoke to, no matter where they went, nobody knew where O'Day was or what happened to him. But as they hit all these dead ends, the investigators' search continued, and it sort of slowly migrated north through Antwerp in the rough direction where O'Day had been last seen walking, away from the city center and towards the banks of the River Scheldt, which runs right through Antwerp on its way to the North Sea.
Okay.
On the evening of November 7th,
Wait, so he was on the way to the
away
river?
from the city center and towards in the rough direction where O'Day had been last seen, migrated north through Antwerp in the rough direction. The evening of November, which runs right through Antwerp on its city center and towards the banks of the River Scheldt, which runs 7th. So by this tour,
But he
away
getting a
from
lot
the
of
city
information,
center and
so
towards the banks of the.
I'm just trying to understand. All right, hold on. Refresh, reset. Everybody reset.
Was or what happened.
Hold on. Everybody reset. We could take 5 seconds to refresh, cause I don't know what the fuck he just said. All right, come on, we good.
Happened to him. But as they hit all these dead ends, the investigators' search continued, and it sort of slowly migrated north through Antwerp in the rough direction where O'Day had been last seen walking, away from the city center and towards the banks of the River Scheldt, which runs right through Antwerp on its way to the North Sea. On the evening of November 7th, so by this point it is 19 days since O'Day was last seen, several detectives from the Missing Persons Unit stepped onto the deck of a very unique structure that literally floated on the River Scheldt. The structure was called the Bod Boat. That morning, police boats had been dragging the river itself and were searching the riverbanks with dogs, looking for any signs of O'Day. But the search of this river couldn't be completed without a stop at the Bod Boat. So the Bod Boat was basically a massive club, bar, and high-end restaurant that had been built into a converted ship that was moored right in the middle of the stretch of the river that police were dragging. But the biggest attraction of the Bod Boat was not the food or the dancing. It was the almost Olympic-sized swimming pool that had been built into the deck of the ship, and it looked like it was floating right on top of the river. People referred to it as the world's largest floating swimming pool, and it was always packed. The Bod Boat had a very good, very wide, unobstructed view of the city and the river. And so the detectives were hopeful that if O'Day had passed by, someone on the Bod Boat likely would have been able to see him. So now the detectives split up and began interviewing the Bod Boat staff and the patrons, asking if any of them remembered seeing a young man in a distinctive black and white checkered scarf on the morning he went missing. Now, at this point, pretty much everybody in the city had already heard of O'Day. I mean, his face was plastered on posters everywhere, and people really wanted to help. But as detectives talked to everybody at the Bod Boat and the pool and the bar and the restaurant,
even if they did see him 20 days later, you gonna remember a random nigga you never seen. Like 20 days later, maybe yesterday, but 20 days later? Fuck no. I'd have seen a million
As much as people wanted to help and thought they might have tips that could help, nobody had anything that was meaningful. And so eventually, the investigators had to leave the Bod Boat, and they just spent the rest of the afternoon on the banks of the river, watching the Marine unit do its work. But just like on the Bod Boat, there was nothing found in the river itself.
Damn.
On November 19th, 2013.
I like how he do his own commercial breaks. Is this, bro, do he not got a Netflix show yet? Bro, he should. Why he don't got a Netflix show yet? They probably ain't getting him no good deals. That's probably why. There ain't no point in him doing it if he could keep all his, if he can keep all his ownership, and you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. He keep his ownership, you know what I'm saying? Keep all his money on. He don't got nobody taking cuts out his shit. Yeah.
So now 1 full month after O'Day's disappearance, friends and family gathered publicly, both in Antwerp and his hometown in the Basque country of Spain. In Spain, his family made it clear that they still hoped O'Day would be alive, and that this gathering was not a memorial. It was instead to show their love for O'Day and to bring continued attention to his story so he could be found. In Antwerp, O'Day's friends tried to convey the same message with their meetup, that O'Day had to be out there somewhere and he might be okay. We just need to keep looking. However, by the end of 2013, so now over 2 months after O'Day's disappearance,
2 months? I thought
it became clear that the police investigation was really not making much headway at all. Police still had those 3 muggers in custody in hopes that maybe they would crack and they would admit that they had done something to O'Day after the muggings. But the 3 men had not changed their stories at all. And also, after over a month of canvassing the entire city, no new evidence had really surfaced at all. And so O'Day's friends and family really began to worry that the police might just abandon the search because there was nothing they could do. But then, starting in the early summer of 2014, so a little more than 7 months after
that's when
O'Day
people
first
start being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hire my own shit because the police ain't doing nothing. I feel it, bro. You can't blame the family.
Disappeared. Something incredible happened. O'Day's story went viral. And not just in Belgium or in his native Spain, but all across Europe. And this really is not how things typically played out. Thousands of people go missing in Europe every year.
Right.
And most of those cases go relatively unnoticed by the media and the general public. It just is what it is. But the story of this young man who had moved to Antwerp to start his career and a new life, only to vanish without a trace after being mugged twice in the middle of the night, It just seemed so unbelievable and also resonated with people everywhere. It just felt so tragic. And so as the police, who by this point really had throttled back their search quite a bit, I mean, it's been 7 months by now. As police really had throttled back their search quite a bit. I mean, it's been 7 months by now. As police were showing signs of just basically
Did they release the muggers yet?
Dropping the case, people all across the continent demanded the police not just continue, but increase their scrutiny. Look everywhere, triple your efforts, find O'Day. And so there's all this unbelievable international outpouring of support from this viral story. I mean, you had poets all over the world writing poems about O'Day, and you had musicians writing music about O'Day. You had charity groups coming out in Belgium and doing their own search for O'Day. I mean, it's like the whole world was rallying to get the Belgian government to act. Like, triple your efforts, find O'Day, he's out there. And then
they basically saying, like, do your fucking job. It shouldn't take all that for
And what sort of pushed it over the edge was in October of 2014, as the first anniversary of O'Day's disappearance approached, one of the most famous soccer players in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo, played a game with images of O'Day on his jersey. I mean, his story really had reached basically everyone.
Right.
And it was at this point that Belgium did act. The Belgium National Police literally doubled down on their efforts to search the entire country for O'Day. They're not just looking in Antwerp anymore, they're going to look everywhere. They also enlisted the help of Interpol, an international police organization, to expand the search to other European countries. And so throughout 2014 and into 2015, investigators in Antwerp revisited bars, restaurants they had gone to during their initial canvass, and they re-interviewed people connected to O'Day. They also made public announcements to let people know they were still looking for O'Day. But despite all this effort, despite really doing their absolute best to find O'Day, they couldn't find him. But then on September 18th, 2015, so 1 year and 11 months after O'Day's disappearance, something happened with the bod boat that changed everything.
What happened?
What if you can create your own website by saying, this is what I want? With Wix, you can't.
So to understand what happened, you need to take into account the literal design of the bod boat.
I see it. It's like, you know what I'm saying? I see it.
So the bod boat really was, this entertainment hub that had been installed in this decommissioned boat. But the boat is not like a boat that we think of when we think of a huge ship or something where there's multiple stories and a huge deep keel that goes beneath the surface of the water. Instead, it was more like a big floating dock, almost like a catamaran-style boat, where it's sort of one level, this big rectangular square, and there really is nothing below the surface. It's more like a big floating dock. That was the bod boat. And on September 18th, 2015, the swimming pool on the bod boat began to leak. Now, remember, you're looking out at the bod boat from land, and it basically looks like a big floating dock with all these attractions on it, including a pool. And so even though you'd see the surface of the swimming pool being at level with everything else, basically right at the top of the river, well, there's a recessed portion that effectively touches down into the river. And so at some point, there's a leak that formed on the base of this pool, and the pool began taking on all this extra water, and the pool literally broke off from the bod boat structure, and it sank to the bottom of the river. Now, luckily, no one had gotten hurt when this happened, but the story had taken over the news. The bod boat was a huge attraction for people in Antwerp, as well as for tourists visiting the city, and so the city immediately began working to come up with a plan to resurface the swimming pool and rebuild the bod boat. Finally, on February 11th, 2016, so almost 2.5 years after O'Day's disappearance and 5 months after the swimming pool sunk, 2 cranes attached to a boat were brought in to latch onto the base of this pool at the bottom of the river and try to resurface it. And on that afternoon, a member of the work crew stood on the boat, watching the water and helping oversee everything as the cranes slowly did their work. And as he kept his eyes trained on the water, eventually, the bod boat's swimming pool, which was still actually mostly intact, broke the surface. And as this happened, a few of the workers let out a cheer, but something in the water caught the crew member's attention. At first, he couldn't tell what it was,
O'Day, man.
but when he leaned down to get a better look, he immediately shouted for the crane operator to stop. The cranes fell silent, and with shaking hands, the crew member took out his phone and called the police. Eventually, once they put all the evidence together, this is what police believe happened to O'Day on the early morning of October 19th, 2013.
Where was he at, though?
At around 4 a.m., after leaving his friends, O'Day began his walk home. And like the police already knew, he was mugged twice in a matter of minutes. But after the second mugging, he really did pick himself up and sort of collect himself, and very likely he was hurt, he was scared.
Did he even know where he was at? He didn't have no phone, and he just moved out here.
He was very drunk, so likely disoriented, doesn't know if there are more threats coming, doesn't really understand what's even happening, but he needs to get home. And we know he continued trying to walk home for some time, because eventually he came in contact with a group of strangers who would eventually come forward and confirm this. But they apparently saw this guy who looked beat up and disoriented. It was O'Day. And they called out to him and tried to convince him to let them book him a cab to get him home. But he was so disoriented and so drunk, he didn't even answer them, and he just walked off. But at that point, he had moved fairly far north in the city, and he was getting near the banks of the River Skelt. So for reference, he had walked pretty far off course. He was not near his home. He was clearly lost. And at some point in his disoriented, scared, drunken state, he tripped and actually fell into the river.
Okay.
Now, the shock of landing in the water...
And then they searched the fucking river? That's why I said they weren't doing no good job.
Likely, potentially sobered him up a little bit, but he was really, really drunk. And so even if he had tried to swim and get to shore, there was a strong enough current that it would have been fairly difficult to get out of the water. And so the current ended up pulling him all the way up against the side of the bod boat. And so once he was there, kind of pinned against the side of the bod boat, right on the side of the bod boat where that swimming pool was, he was too weak and drunk to swim out of the current. And so he just kind of being pressed up against the wall of the side of the bod boat until he had no more energy left to fight. And he was slowly pulled under the surface and forced underneath the bod boat, specifically to the bottom of the recess of the swimming pool, where there's not much space between the bottom of the pool and the bottom of the river. And so he basically got pulled down and got wedged right in that space underneath the pool of the bod boat. And there he drowned. And for more than 2 years after his death, O'Day's body remained wedged underneath that swimming pool. And so for all that time, people are swimming in the pool, not realizing they're a couple feet away from a dead body. But then finally, the swimming pool, sunk to the bottom. It was pulled back up by those cranes, and attached to it at this point was O'Day's body. And that was how they found him. Yeah. The muggers who attacked O'Day were ultimately convicted of robbery, and they all served approximately 4 years in prison. Now, the muggers were never actually shown to have any direct connection to O'Day's death. And while authorities believe the most likely scenario is that O'Day simply fell into the water, they were never able to officially rule out foul play.
Right.
O'Day's parents have called for further investigation.
Right. Yeah, that's a very, that's not no good.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode.
That don't give you no type of, you know what I'm saying? That give you, it still leave you with kind of more questions, you feel me? Yeah. Damn. Nah, man. Is this the dude who who they numbed him and they forgot to put him to sleep, so they did his whole surgery, or they paralyzed him but they forgot to put him to sleep, so the whole surgery he just was alive. I mean, he was just woke. And so he was woke and he felt everything. And then they gave him, when they realized he was woke, they gave him some other drug that make him forget what had happened. But his body still felt the trauma of getting his, what I'm saying, getting your shit dug into and cut all open and stuff. So he was just scared, and he had schizophrenia for no reason. And he would have nightmares where he remembered his surgery, and he would feel everything and shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they fucked up. Stop letting these humans do work on y'all, man. You can't trust their ass.